Welcome to ZOOMERTIMES TV. And here's your host, Anita Finley.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Anita Finley, your host of the ZOOMERTIMES TV. And I love doing this, but sometimes it's even more special for me because I get extraordinary guests. Many of our guests, whether they're celebrities or authors, are unique to many of us. I must say that I did not know Bruce Turkel before. I should have, because he's a guru for branding products. But what he did now is he decided to write a book, and and everybody knows, is that all there is? Who wrote that? So that's the name of the book. But of course, the letters on the book is ITATI. Is that all there is? So Bruce, how did you get this idea to do this here? You're a branding guru, and now you're doing this book.
Well, it's a long story that I will tell as quickly as possible. But when I was running my branding firm, I would have a lot of friends come talk to me, and they wanted to know how they could make their lives more interesting. They were very successful. They were developers, they were lawyers, they were physicians, all sorts of business people. But somehow they didn't think they were doing what they wanted to do. I didn't really have an answer for them. Truth be told, I didn't know why they were asking me. When I asked them that, they told me that they saw my life. I was writing books on marketing at the time, and I was running this ad agency, and we were shooting commercials and playing in a band and doing all these things. And so they thought I had figured out the secret to, living a creative, fulfilling life. But I didn't really have any answers for them. But the one thing I did say to every single one of them was, a lot of people ask me about this, and I kind of see it in the zeitgeist that we all operate within. If I were you, I would keep a journal. I would keep track of your journey, because I think at some point you're going to want to write a book about this. Well, people kept asking me. I kept going to these lunches and essentially having people ask me the same thing, and I kept giving them the same answer. And then one day I thought, you know what? Why don't I take my own advice? Why don't I stop telling them to write the book? And why don't I go write the book? And that's how it happened.
Oh, that's a very interesting story, but I want to backtrack a minute. What do you mean playing in a band? You're a musician?
I have played music since I was a kid. I took piano lessons, and then I played trumpet in high school. In the band, I was in my senior year in high school, I was in band, jazz band, marching band, concert band, orchestra, and rock ensemble. So I was playing all the time. I played music in college. I taught myself to play the guitar and the harmonica. And so I've continued to play in bands, all for fun, mind you, except now when I get up on stage, because I speak at a lot of conferences, and I show people how to build their brands, or now I start speaking to support my new book, I actually play music on stage. And I show people how doing something you're passionate about, how you can use that to actually expand and improve your life, the things you do, and your excitement for day to day.
And what instrument? I didn't catch that. Do you do?
Well, I play the trumpet.
That's not the one.
I play the trumpet, the guitar, and the harmonica.
Okay, but in school you played the trumpet.
I played trumpet. I played trumpet in school. The problem with trumpet is you have to play an hour to 2 hours every single day to maintain your embouchure. You lose those muscles, and you just can't play anymore. So that's why I learned to play the harmonica. They're easier to carry, and they're not quite as taxing.
Well, I'll tell you something now that we talked about that. I was in the band in high school. I played the bells, the glockenspiels.
Of course.
And so I did that for 4 years, actually, because at that time it was 9, 10, 11, 12. And then during the time when we weren't marching, I played the chimes. But it wasn't a passion for me. It was just that I had some music background and all, but I do agree with you with the passion. And one thing I will tell you is that many people do have passions, but they can't afford their passion. And that's something that I have started asking people since I've been reading your book. What is your passion? And they'll tell me. I say, why aren't you doing that? Well, I can't afford that. So what's your answer to that?
Well, so that's very interesting. What is your passion? People will tell you, and then they can't figure out how to utilize it. But no one is suggesting that you should make 100%, I'm sorry, pardon me, dedication to your passion. Instead, you should look for ways to include it in your life. Truth be told, in a lot of the bands I play in, the guys in the bands who are professional musicians are actually quite unhappy about the gigs we play because they're not getting paid enough. The audience isn't big enough. They're not happy with the sound system. Whereas for me, it's just a joy. I get to play with great musicians. I get to play for other people. If there's just a bartender there, I'm perfectly happy. What's more, I realized I'm okay, I'm good, but I wasn't good enough to be a real professional. That's not a hardship for me because I spend time with a lot of musicians. They're much better than I am, but I figured out how to utilize music in my life. As I told you, when I'm up on stage, I play music. When I ran my ad agency, I would write jingles and I would write the music for the ads. So I was able to incorporate it. It didn't have to be my overriding source of income. One of the things I write about in the book is multiple sources of income, how important it is not to quit your day job, not to go run off and be a starving artist, because it's got the word starving in it. And I don't think that leads you to a better life, but you can take what you care about, political causes, your spirituality, animals, exercise, whatever it is, and you can utilize it to make your life better.
There's a beautiful words. Let's go to your title. Is that all there is? Now, it seems like anytime you say that, everyone knows it was Peggy Lee that sang that song. So what do you think that she meant?
Well, it's very interesting because I read up on the song, and when Lieber and Stoller presented her with the lyrics, what they had found was that other people who they presented the lyrics to thought the song was very sad because it talks about all these things that happen and how terrible life is. And she actually saw it as quite uplifting because in her opinion, if all these bad things have happened, then that's not all there is. And let's keep dancing. Her point was life is life. You go through these different things, but then you figure out a way to make the most of what you have. When I wrote the book, I actually wanted to include the lyrics of the song in the book, but because of trademark laws, I wasn't able to do that. Luckily, enough people our age know the song. And if you don't, it's quite an easy internet search and you can hear her sing it. You can read the lyrics and you'll see her point. This happens, this happens, this happens. You might as well dance. And I love that idea.
It was perfect. And although you had great words for many of the chapters before you got into sharing the 14, the people who you quoted. Now, let me go back to that. So the 14 people that you chose, and I am going to ask you that, why did you choose those particular people? Because they are quite diverse.
Well, diversity was a big part of it. I say early on in the book, when I tell my story, I say, look, here's what worked for me. But come on, Anita, that doesn't mean it will work for you or it's going to work for your viewers and your listeners. The idea is if I only tell you my story, you may or may not find it interesting, but I think that's rather one-dimensional. So I wanted to go out and find other people and get their stories. What's more, I'm a marketing guy. That's what I've done my whole career. We go out and talk to people. We go out and talk to customers. We do research. We find out why people buy products, why they don't buy products, what they care about. And so I thought I could use that same skill set that I had, that ability to not only be a researcher, but then to intuit the information or to infer the information from the research and then return it, bring it back out in ways that could be helpful. So again, I thought it wasn't enough just to tell how I changed my life, but I thought it was important to talk to other people. So that's why diversity was important. Diversity of reasoning. Some people changed their lives for good reasons. They had a big business success. Their kids were off to college and they could become empty nesters and they could afford to. Some people changed their lives for bad reasons. There's a story about a woman who quit her job, had 2 young children. She was dedicated to taking care of her kids. And then her husband came in one day and said, I'm leaving. And she had to figure out how to become a breadwinner, how to still raise her 2 daughters. People who've had terrible diseases. There's a story about a young man who was horribly molested and then became a drug addict. And what did he do to change his life. So it's good and bad. The idea being you'll see things in there you can relate to. You'll see things in there you would do. And in fact, you'll see things in there you would never do. But either way, they provide you with help making your own roadmap. And then I also thought it was important that we use the classical definition of the word diversity, that there were people who came from different backgrounds, looked different from one another, had different aspirations, had different education levels. Because again, I want the book to provide a universal solutions for people, not simply to say, here's what I did. So diversity was really important to me.
So let me show everybody. We just did review the book in our October issue of Boomer Times, and I hope you will read it. And then I hope you will buy the book. In fact, I said
So do I.
in my review, run, get the book, because it's a rare book. It's so filled. It's filled with philosophy and stories and ideas, as Bruce Turkel, who is the author, said. So is that all there is, with the big letters standing for, is that all there is? Well, let me then ask you another question about the writing of those 14 individuals. So you interviewed them, and then you put it in your words about them. So tell me how long it took you to interview them first, and then how long it takes you to make this into something that was very interesting.
Sure. And I did exactly what you said. I interviewed them first. First, I told them what the concept was, why I was interested in them. And there were a lot more people than the ones I featured in the book. I picked the ones that I thought told the most useful stories and the most entertaining and interesting stories. But I explained the concept to them. And then I asked them simply, tell me your story. Tell me how you got to where you are today. Tell me about your journey. And people would say, where do I begin? And you can say, you can begin with, my grandparents came to this country, or you can begin, when I graduated college, I didn't know what to, that's completely up to you. It's based on who you are and where you are, but tell me your story. And so they would talk for more or less an hour-ish, I guess is the right way to put it. And I recorded these conversations, and then I had them transcribed. Now, the problem is the way you and I talk, the way you tell a story is not the way we read, because we tend not to speak chronologically. We do say maybe, well, I grew up here and then I went to school here and then I did this. Oh, but I forgot to tell you. And then they'll jump back and then they'll jump forward. And so, and when you're having a conversation, it's very easy to follow. But when you're reading, I find that it's not actually that cogent. It gets a little difficult. So I then turned those interviews into cogent stories that each had a thread that started somewhere, that had the ups and the downs, and then the results. And then I had people talk about why they did what they did, how they did what they did, what their results were. If I thought there was something missing, like maybe they didn't talk about, well, how did you get that job? Or how did you pay for that education? Or whatever, I would go back and ask them. And then I would incorporate it into the narrative. So it wasn't an oversight, but it was a very clear narrative. But I didn't change anybody's words. I didn't change anybody's stories. I just tried to take what they said and make it as cogent and, as I said, give it a thread. So it was kind of like Goldilocks, right? You could follow the breadcrumbs. You go here, then you go here. I tried to really help them create a roadmap. That's how I did it.
It was brilliantly written. I must say, I just can't tell you, I do review a lot of books. And this book sits now on my coffee table. You know, I have a library, I put my books, but not this one, because I have talked about it, I've shared it. And of course, when you read a book quickly, as I had to do to get the review, I want to go back now. I want to go back slowly, because you have such pearls and jewels in there. And I believe that your background in advertising marketing helps, because you understand why people want to read things. You highlight certain ideas. But I'm sure you're going to write another book. Now you need to write books because you're so good at this.
Well, I've already written about 150 pages of the next book. I'm not sure of the title now. It's either called What Now or Now What? But I'm already deep into it. I happen to love writing. I know so many authors talk about how difficult writing is, but for me, it's just a pleasure. This is my 6th book, and I just enjoy it. So it's easy for me to dive into a project.
let's go back to when you said the sixth book. This book and the one you're writing now, that was different from what you wrote before. Why don't you talk about your branding success?
Sure. My first four books are all on branding. The first one is called Brain Darts, and it's about creative work that people pay attention to. The second one is called New Design Miami, which was about the design vernacular of Miami. I marketed Miami for the last 25 years. We did all the brand work. So we sought out designers in Miami, and I talked about them. The book after that was called Building Brand Value, and it was the 7 steps that people or companies need to take to build an effective, compelling brand. And then my publisher wanted me to write a book on each of the 7 steps. The first one was all about them. And so All About Them was the 4th book. And then it was time to write the next one, which would have been Hearts Than Minds, but I actually didn't want to. I figured I had said what I wanted to say about branding. While I was doing this, I also wrote a novel, really just to prove to myself that I could do it. I had 3 things I wanted to prove. A, could I write a novel? The answer is yes. B, could I write it solely on airplanes? Because I travel all the time to speak at these conferences. And I thought, well, if I write on airplanes, that'll give me something to do all the time. And I did that. And then finally, I was having a conversation with my son about finishing what you start. I forget what it was, but it was a class he wanted to take or a sports team or something. And once he started it, he didn't want to continue. And I said, you don't have to continue for the rest of your life, but you do have to continue for the program that we signed you up for, because you have to finish what you start. Then you can make a decision and see if you want to move further. As a matter of fact, I decided I want to write a novel, and I'm going to prove to you how you do this. I am going to finish this novel. And I gave it to him, theoretically, for his birthday. That was called The Mouth of the South. Those were the books I had written before. The Mouth of the South. It's about a con man from Louisiana who moves to Miami and becomes a developer.
Oh, that's very interesting. The Mouth of the South, right.
It's on Amazon. I only put it up for $3. I think it's $3.37. At the time, that was the cheapest amount you could post a book for. So I just put it there so my friends could read it.
What is the title? What does the cover look like?
The cover looks like a cutout.
You have one right there?
I don't. I have all my other books right here. I don't have that one.
But not that one.
But it's just a big face. It just made out of cutout face going, because it's called The Mouth of the South.
Right. Well, your creativity is mind-blowing. I'm just so thrilled. I know you live in Coconut Grove, which is a very, very artistic, but very cosmopolitan place, as small as it is. And I'm sure you get a lot of ideas. You can just sit there and watch people walk by and get ideas.
Actually, Mouth of the South, when I was a kid, I was a volunteer at Jackson Memorial Hospital, and I worked in the morgue, believe it or not, at 13 years old. And so I included that. There was a little Cuban restaurant in Coral Gables called Nana's that I used to eat at all the time. And so I used that. I used all the things because Miami is such a fascinating place. There's so much that came from my daily experiences.
I always ask about mothers and fathers of people, whether they're celebrities or authors. Can you share about your mom and dad?
Sure. My parents were from New York. My mom is still alive and quite healthy. My father passed away 10 years ago. My dad was from the Bronx. My mother was born in Brooklyn, but grew up in Queens. They came here. My dad was stationed here in the Air Force. So he went back to New York, met my mom, came down to Miami Beach, and I was born on South Beach. My dad was a builder. He built condos on the beach. But the real important thing my parents did was they were very, very involved in the civil rights movement in the early 60s. The ACLU gave them a Lifetime Achievement Award. If you go on YouTube and you put in our last name, Turkel and ACLU, there's actually a 6-minute video about what they did. My father drove all over the state, bailing out freedom workers. They did incredible things. They organized the sit-ins in downtown Miami. If you go to the Smithsonian, they say the first anti-segregation sit-in was in North Carolina in 1961, but that's not true. It was in Miami in 1959. We have the newspaper clippings of it. I can't get the Smithsonian interested in changing it, but my parents did that. And they just did incredible things throughout their lives. They were both big supporters of the arts, of culture. I have a brother and a sister. They were big supporters of the three of us. And my parents are really, truly superheroes. the things they did in their lives are just astounding.
See, and that's where you get your confidence, self-confidence, because I always find when someone is not confident, they didn't have the love, they didn't have the parents that were really behind them. So that's, you really, and I know you thank them, but I see that now. And your mom, you said, is in her 90s, I think?
My mom is 86. I
Oh,
don't know if I'm allowed to
86.
say her age, but
Sorry.
she's
And
86.
where does she live now?
She lives on, she still lives on South Beach. She lives on the first Venetian island. My
Oh,
mother
that's
has,
right, near where my mother lived. We talked about that.
right. She's lived within a 1 mile radius since she moved from New York. The funny thing is, I had said to her one day, you know, Mom, at where we live, there's a guest house. And my wife's grandmother lived with us for 9 years. She had dementia and we took care of her. And my wife is a medical professional and specializes in elder care. I said, so, you know, maybe one day, if it's necessary, you can come live with us. And my mother said, I will not live in the suburbs. I'm a New Yorker.
Right.
Mom, you've been in Miami since you were 22. She said, no, I'm a New Yorker. So
she likes to walk Lincoln Road.
she does every day.
Well, coming from South Beach myself, that's why I think you and I had a quick relationship, because so much of my life seemed similar to yours. But getting back to your book, Is That All There Is? So now for you, let's personally look at you. So now you're writing novels. Is that all there is?
You know, as I told you, I'm working on the new book.
Okay.
I was traveling all over the world speaking at conferences until COVID kind of took the wind out of that sail. I'm hoping that's going to come back. But I started setting up strategic roundtables, working with people on Zoom, showing them how to build their brands, but then more importantly now, showing people how to figure out what their highest and best use is, what they can be doing to really live the lives they want to live. I sold my agency 5 years ago, so I don't have to worry about keeping that ship moving forward. And instead, I can really focus on the things I want to do, which is writing, thinking, showing people how to use these tools, tips, and techniques that I learned from so many great people. I mean, truly, we stand on the shoulders of giants. There's so many incredible people who have done such incredible things. And if we just ask them and listen to them and learn from them, the opportunities are kind of endless. So if I can do those things, and then I can, you know, play some music and spend time with my family. I like to run. I am the world's slowest marathon runner. There's lots of things I like to do, and I can spend my time doing those things, but really try to give back and provide this high level information that's out there, and people need it desperately. I mean, so many people tell me how unhappy they are doing what they're doing, when from the outside looking in, you would say, oh my God, you have the perfect life. You've made plenty of money. You have a great business. You have a great family. You have this, you have that. And so many people are unhappy with it. And so many people are saying, is that all there is? I think there's a real need for this.
Well, this glorious interview is with Bruce Turkel. This is his book. Is That All There Is? Those are the initials for it. And I have just been telling you, you can hear him in the book. If you want more of him, and I'm sure you do, you need to buy his book. We're very privileged to have Bruce with us. We will have him, of course, there'll be another interview with him, but I am really looking forward to going down to Coconut Grove and seeing Bruce personally, because he is a fireball, but he is kind and he's generous. And that's what I think is the nice combination of people. He's not arrogant, but yet he has a lot of very good information. So Bruce, when we, because I know you said your wife, of course, she does elder care as I do, but as a gerontologist, I have always supported the elder population. Unfortunately, a lot of people never realized who they were or how experienced they are and how much good they can teach us.
People take their knowledge, their experience, their wisdom for granted. Here's what I learned in this book. The people who were the most successful were the ones who said, I know how to do this, so I went out and I did it again. Or I know how to do this, so I took those skills and I put them in a new area and I used them. They constantly reinvented themselves. Chris Crowley, the gentleman who wrote Younger Next Year, who's in the book, I love his saying.
Wrote your forward, actually.
He wrote the forward, and he's also interviewed later on.
Yes.
He said, you should repot yourself.
Yes.
You should dig yourself up by the roots and repot yourself. He says you should live more than one life. So he took what he was good at. He was a very successful attorney, and he took that understanding and used it in his next adventure. And what I've also found is the people who maybe are a little less satisfied or who feel stuck, who don't think they can make those moves, they tend not to value the things they do well because they do it well. So it comes to them easily. So therefore, what's the big deal? I'll give you an example. I draw and doodle all the time. And when I sit in meetings, I mostly draw caricatures of the people speaking. That's how I take notes. And then I write my notes. But I do it like cartoons, like voice balloons. Well, I happen to be good at it. I'm not bragging. It's just something that I'm good at. So whoever's sitting next to me will say, oh my God, that looks just like Anita. How did you do that? I said, well, I just draw them. They said, oh my God, I'd love to do that. I said, well, you could do that. All it takes is practice. So the person will say, oh, okay. How often do you practice? I say, I have been doing this every day since I was probably in second grade, because I sat in every class and I drew pictures of people. So I take it for granted. For me, it's easy. You just do this. But I realized other people can't do that. They look at that as an incredible skill. And so when I speak at conferences or when I do my strategic roundtables, I draw pictures to show people how I do things. I write all my speeches in pictures and I send those speeches to the clients. The things that we take for granted tend to be the places where we have real value, wisdom, experience, and one more thing, contacts. Especially at our ages, we have contacts. Those contacts allow us to get things done, from finding insurance to getting a reservation in a restaurant, to meeting a potential client, to getting an interview, to you and I being introduced because someone told me about you, someone who had a contact and told me about you, and then we had contacts in general. And we do not take advantage of those things.
You talked about contacts, and I think that really is a great word. And especially now with our iPhones, we have it accessible, very accessible. But just going back to this, the one thing that I really feel people need to be more humble, kind, practice the rule of, the golden rule. And I don't know how we get people to do that. It seems like it's either in them or it's not in them.
Well, that's what the previous book, All About Them, that's what it was about. Grow your business by focusing on others. And yeah, it's a business book. It's a customer service book. But many people have told me, I use the things you talk about with my family. If you focus on others, if you are always thinking about how are they perceiving this, not how are they perceiving me? Do they like my shirt? Do they like the way I did my hair? I don't mean that. But how are they going to use what I'm saying? How can I add value to this relationship? I think from the moment you and I started chatting, we were both on that sort of journey. How can I add value? You said to me, I have a magazine, I do interviews, we should do something together. I can help you present your book to people who would be interested. And I'm thinking, how can I provide value? I have all this information, I have all these interviews, I have all these tools, tips, and techniques that your readers, your listeners want access to. I wasn't thinking, wow, if I do this, I can sell 10 or 100 or 1,000 more books. I was thinking, how do we build our connective tissue? Because when we do that, that's where the benefits come from.
I wish I could be a little angel sitting on your shoulder on all the things you do, because I rarely find people like you. You are extraordinary, and I'm not just saying that, but you know that. But you have a very kind heart, and you are so open to helping people. That seems to be your modus operandi. Before we run out of time, and we just have a couple of minutes, tell me a little bit about your wife.
Oh, my wife is an incredible, incredible person. My wife came to the United States from Cuba when she was 2 years old, and she had incredible losses in her family. Parents, she was raised by her grandparents. She put herself through school. We met when she was in nursing school. And she has dedicated her life really to caring for others. She was a CCU nurse, an intensive care nurse, an emergency room nurse. She then went back to school at 50 and got her nurse practitioner's license. And now she works in private practice 2 days a week, mostly with older patients, but not exclusively, working with a physician, and they do family. He's a rheumatologist. They do family practice. But then she also does hospice work 3 days a week. She says, I had a lot of loss in my life. I know what people are going through. I understand how to make their lives better. She's also a huge animal lover. We have 2 dogs. We have 2 giant tortoises on our property. She's out feeding her birds every morning. It's like that Dr. Dolittle movie. All the birds are flying in. She has a huge vegetable garden. She has orchid gardens. My wife is a vegetarian. Our daughter is a vegan. She actually is in Los Angeles visiting our daughter right now. She's coming home tonight. I haven't seen her in a week. She's
Oh my
just
goodness.
wonderfully
I could see an
compassionate.
explosion from Coconut Grove here in Boynton Beach.
Wonderful, compassionate person, very involved in politics, very concerned about education, about civil rights, about people's rights. She's also gorgeous. So put that all together. It's a great package.
You know, I have to tell you something, and I love George Clooney. And as we're talking, I see you as George Clooney in a way.
I love George Clooney. My wife.
I do. And you know, talk about his wife. But there's something about you. There's this magic. And I know that now Dan is here saying that we've run out of time. We will have you back again, but you have brought a lot of joy to my life. And I want people to read your book because it will bring joy to their book, to their lives also. Thank you so much, Bruce. It was so joyful. And I know that Bruce Turkel, is that all there is? This is the book. And when you get your magazine, then the October issue, you'll read the review. This is the issue. And I'm just thrilled to death to have you with us.
Well, you've been just a delight. You are so open and considerate, and you have so many great ideas. You gave me so many different outlets and ways to get this book out there. And then your enthusiasm and your support for it has just been so affirming. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you. So goodbye for now, and we'll be back again with another interview.
Bye-bye.